afinar mi acordeón.
Once again, here it's your host, Gabe Morales. Today we have a very special guest talking about a very interesting topic. Mr. Robert Almonte was appointed the U.S. Marshal for the Western District of Texas in 2010 for 6 years. He was previously with the El Paso PD and retired after 25 years there, finally retiring as a deputy chief. Robert is an international expert on Mexican drug cartels, as well as Narco-Corridos and Narco-Culture, which we will cover in detail here today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Robert here to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Gabe. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
All right. We're glad to have you. And so first, let me ask the guest, if you have any questions, maybe you weren't able to email them, but you can put those in the comments. We'll have a question and answer session towards the end of this show. So we got some people already welcome us and happy to hear what we got to say here. So think about that, maybe a couple questions that we haven't covered here that you'd like to hear towards the end of the show. Really appreciate that. And so, Robert, let me ask you, where did you grow up? Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Gabe, I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. Actually grew up just about 4 blocks away from the U.S.-Mexico border on the other side of the border with Juarez, Mexico. And I became a police officer, spent 25 years there with the El Paso Police Department.
All right. So then, when you were growing up in Chuco Town, as they call El Paso,
Yeah, Chuco Town.
for people who may not be familiar with that. And so when you're growing up, did you ever see any drug cartels, like, as a teenager or anything coming across, or did you ever go across the Juarez and see any of that kind of stuff?
Growing up 4 blocks away from the border, we were very fortunate. We actually lived in a pretty decent neighborhood. I mean, we had some gang activity and we would hear about gang activity. And then growing up, you'd hear about activity in Juarez. But, times were different than they are now, Gabe. Back then, my parents used to drive me and my brother across the bridge, International Bridge to Juarez just about every weekend to have lunch, breakfast, dinner, whatever, and get our hair cut, buy a case of pop, come back. And it was no big deal. The only really time I noticed I was in a different country was coming back and declaring our citizenship. But those were good times, and because of the situation now in Juarez, and not only Juarez but throughout Mexico, unfortunately those days are gone. And it wasn't until I became a police officer and started working narcotics, that I became very aware of the cartel, the Juarez cartel. Actually, when I was working undercover, I was actually buying drugs that belonged to or came from the Juarez cartel.
Got you. Well, I know, I went down to Tijuana. I was, from Washington State, where we're broadcasting here from now. But I went down to Tijuana quite a bit, 40 years ago. And I never felt really any, danger either, other than, people always say, hey, watch out for the cab driver so he doesn't overcharge you, that kind of thing. But yeah. I wandered all over the place and never felt unsafe. But of course, I would not be, feel that way today. Things have changed, like you said.
Yeah, well, times are different. I can tell you, Gabe, that what I did notice, and this was a long time ago in the 60s, me and my brothers in the car, and my dad being pulled over in Juarez by a police officer. And I just remember my dad saying something to the effect of, no, sir, I don't think I did that. Next thing I know, my dad's handing the officer some cash. And then my dad was allowed to go on his way. And that's when I was introduced at a very young age to the term La Mordida.
Right.
And that's basically greasing their palms so they'll let you go. And unfortunately, and if you want to get into that, because I do discuss that in my training, the corruption at all levels in Mexico. But I saw that at a very young age.
Right. Well, we both know, they have historically not paid very well or trained very well down there. So I'm hoping things, have got better. I know some good police officers that are working down there, had discussions with and brought in for training. So, they're fighting a tough battle down there. And I know that also.
Yeah, no, likewise. Thankfully, there are some good, honest police officers in Mexico. Otherwise, situation would be far worse than it is now, no doubt.
Most definitely, most definitely. So let's talk a little bit about your career then. So as far as being a police officer on this side of the border, what were some of the issues that you encountered as a line officer when you first started out in the business? How has that changed over the years?
Well, the line officer, the patrol officer, I was very fortunate in the sense that I was assigned to a very busy district. So we dealt with all kinds of calls, a lot of shootings and stabbings and gang activity and drug activity. So I learned very quick. And I actually grew up, I like to say I grew up on the street, not as a kid, but as a police officer, when I really, had an introduction to what's really going on out in the streets. And, I stay in touch with officers that are on the job. I do ride-alongs with officers, El Paso, down Laredo, different areas, Webb County. And so I do the ride-alongs and see that they're pretty much doing the same thing, with the exception they're probably busier now than we were back then, although they do have some things that we didn't have back then, like pop-out radios. I'm going way back. And,
Right.
The technology, the computers and the GPS. Oh my God. I remember how difficult it was trying to find an address with your spotlight back in those days. But, it really hasn't changed that much. And again, that's why I try to stay current and get exposed to what police officers are doing today by hanging out with them. And that's why I love what I'm doing so much. When I'm speaking, I get to hang out with cops. And when I'm speaking, I learn from them. And I never stop learning. Once anybody thinks they've already know everything, then it's time to hang it up, I think. So I'm excited about continuing to do what I'm doing. But pretty much policing is pretty much the same, just dealing with different issues. And then it's a different environment now with the anti-police, defund the police movement, which I think we'll all agree that now they're starting to see the light, that was the stupidest, dumbass idea they ever thought of, anybody has ever thought of. But anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, most definitely. It's different. These new officers today, much more computer savvy than we were. We had a hard time getting started for the show here. But
I tell you what, yeah.
But those people skills, those interactions, that's never going to change. You got to have that. So
no.
Definitely.
That actually is the police officer's most valuable tool, is the gift of gab, being able to talk to people. And by doing that, you're actually avoiding a lot of situations. You're de-escalating situations. And I really believe that. I'm a firm believer in that. Communication skills, people skills.
Right on.
And treating people with dignity and respect.
Most definitely. And so then when you became, the metal, up there in El Paso, how did it differ as an administrator? Because I know, I'm a supervisor. I'm currently a lieutenant. I won't say the facility I work at, but we deal with immigrant detainees. I see some things that are a lot different as a supervisor role. And then I'm sure as an administrator, you've seen some things that are a little bit different. I always try to identify with the officers. I tell them I never forget where I came from, but still then sometimes I'm kind of treated like the enemy. I mean, like, oh, you're out there to burn us kind of thing. And like, no, don't. I'm sure you're doing everything right. You don't have nothing to worry about if you're doing anything right. Now, if you're doing something wrong, if it's something minor, I might pull you to the side later after it's over and give you some counseling. But I'm there to support you. Now, if you do something that's atrocious, then I'm going to have to take action on that. But it's kind of interesting. They see us sometimes as the enemy. So at least some do, not all. How did you feel about that as being an administrator? And a lot of paperwork too, man, tons of paperwork. Oh my God.
Well, I got to tell you, Gabe, I'm going to give you the short answer on being an administrator. And then if it's okay with you, when we have time, I'd like to run through my supervisory roles below being before becoming a deputy chief.
Yes.
But the bottom line would be, when I became a deputy chief, I stopped having fun. That's the bottom line. I'm behind a desk. And actually, I oversaw over 300 people in my bureau. The good thing is that I had all the detectives in my bureau. I mean, I had all the homicide investigators, narcotic guys, gang guys, everybody. So that was a good thing. But the bottom line, I was behind the desk. Now, I remember I got promoted to detective, and I believe I was one of the first detectives to go directly to narcotics straight off the promotional list. They didn't used to do that. They made you go somewhere, learn investigation and then go to narcotics. So they threw me right into narcotics. And back then it was all OJT, man. And I learned the hard way. And then anyway, I was having a great time as a narcotic detective. I was loving it. The undercover work, the way you don't have to dress in a uniform. I just loved it. It was exciting. I said, man, I can do this forever. And I remember I was doing a report and my lieutenant walked into my little office, my cubicle, and he goes, hey, Robert, are you taking the sergeant's test? I go, come on, LT, why do I want to do that? Look at me. Look at all the fun I'm having, man. I'm having a great time. I have no desire to be a sergeant. And then he told me something that I never forgot. And I tell officers this today. I said, yeah, the lieutenant told me, listen, Robert, don't let your job interfere with your career. And then he said, you can always come back as a supervisor. When he said that, I go, that makes a lot of sense. So started hitting the book, got promoted to sergeant, and then I went to patrol. And then from there, the captain of that regional command selected me to start an impact unit, basically plainclothes, going after in-progress crimes. And then 18 months later, I'm back in narcotics as a sergeant. I oversaw the street unit, then the major crime unit. And then I promoted to lieutenant. I went to patrol. I was a shift commander for 13 months. And then back to narcotics. I was a narcotic commander for 7 years. So I just want to put that out there that I was able to stay in narcotics. I left for a little bit, but I was able to stay in the narcotics the majority of my career. And those were the best days of my career. Now, becoming a deputy chief, again, as I mentioned, it's a different story. The part I didn't like the most about being a deputy chief was dealing with disciplinary issues. And you mentioned the discipline that you got to do. And I'm kind of like that too, old school. I learned as a supervisor, much better off when my supervisor yelled at me in private, instead of writing me up. I mean, hey, I'll take that. I understand today you can't do that anymore. It's just a different generation we're dealing with. But I've seen a lot of people get in trouble, especially officers or detectives working narcotics, specialized unit, quite frankly, because the supervisors aren't doing their job. The supervisors say, hey, this guy's out there buying all kinds of drugs and making all kinds of cases. I'm just going to leave him alone. Well, no, you got to do your job as a supervisor and make sure they're doing things. You're doing that officer a disservice by, keeping hands off. No, I'm not talking about micromanaging, but a lot of officers have gotten in trouble because of lack of supervision. So, it's a balancing act. But I mean, I have no regret. Those 25 years with the El Paso Police Department were the best years, actually, I was going to say in my career. My career, I did 6 years with U.S. Marshal, which was good. I was very blessed to be appointed by the President of the United States Marshal. I didn't see that coming, but I wouldn't trade those 25 years with the El Paso Police Department for nothing.
Right on. Well, yeah, I'm sure there's some politics and other things involved, but I'm sure you got a lot of gratification of all the positions you worked. What would you say was probably one of your best accomplishments or most proudest accomplishments during your career?
Gabe, I think, I don't know, I'd call it an accomplishment. Maybe we'll call it an accomplishment, but I hate to use that word. But I think if I was good at anything, it was being able to select good people for assignments. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was able to surround myself with people that made me look good, with hard workers, guys that had a passion, they had a flame in here, they did things. Oh, don't get me wrong, I supervised them still, but they knew that. And they knew that I was, I had a reputation of being hard, but I was fair. If you're lazy and don't do your job, I'm going to get on your ass. Or I'm going to get rid of you. You know why? Because that's not fair to the guys that are working hard. That's demoralizing. And if you're not as a supervisor, you're not looking at those things, you're not doing your job as a supervisor. Unfortunately, a lot of supervisors want to win a popularity contest. They want to be liked by everybody. Was I liked by everybody? No. But what I feel good about, I'm still liked by the people that were the hard workers. And that means a lot to me. I still talk to some of them and have breakfast with them whenever I'm in El Paso. So anything as far as an accomplishment, I don't consider myself having personal accomplishments. I think they're all team effort. I will look at that. Maybe I had a talent for selecting the right people to do the right job. If that makes any sense.
That does make sense. And I know you're highly respected today. And so then let's talk a little bit now about Mexican drug cartels in particular on this show. I want to talk a little bit about Narco-Corridos and how that comes into play as far as the Mexican drug cartels. How do they use that to further their objectives and entertainment wise? If you ever get a chance, listen to some of the music. It's pretty good, man. You can group to it. But if you listen to the words sometimes, depending on who's singing, what it's about, it can be very telling about individuals and things that happened. And I'll let you cover that a little bit, Robert.
Yeah, well, let me know when you're going to play that music, so I can serve myself a shot of tequila. That's the right mood, man. I hear you. Well, my class, the training I do for our police officers throughout the United States is called the Mexican Cartels and Their Culture. And I think it's important for law enforcement officers throughout the United States to become familiar with the culture of the Mexican cartel because they need to know what the Mexican cartels are doing in their area when they're not holding the drugs in their hands or at the stash house taking care of the drugs. They're living a life. These guys are living a life and they're doing things that cartel guys, Mexicans like to do. So the narco-corridos are part of the Mexican culture, not just part of the Mexican cartel culture, but part of the Mexican culture. So what I did is I've done a lot of research attending different narco-corrido concerts throughout the United States. I've been able to meet some of the people like Los Tigres del Norte, El Commander, Los Tucanes de Tijuana. I've met those guys backstage. But here's the deal, is the cartel members go to these concerts. So I want to go down there and kind of rub elbows with them. Does that make sense?
Yes,
so,
it does.
in an undercover sense, if I'm working undercover today, man, I'd be attending those concerts. The other thing, more importantly, is that these concerts are held throughout the United States. And the officer, whether you're a narcotic officer or a patrol officer, the patrol officers working in that area where a narco-corrido concert is being held, they need to be aware that there's a big concert there that's attended by hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people. So if a call goes out regarding a shooting or a fight, the officer is already aware that there's a narco-corrido concert going on there, so you're going to have a lot of backup arrive. So that's what we're talking about, officer safety. And the other thing is for intel gathering. But I do want to point out that there's a lot of people that go to these concerts and even know all the words to the narco-corridos that are not involved in drug trafficking. But you're right, the songs, a lot of these songs have a really good beat. I teach this class and I play a lot of narco-corrido songs. And some of the lyrics are extremely graphic, talking about cutting people's heads off and using bazookas and all that kind of stuff. And then during break, I'll hear some of the officers walking around humming the songs that I'm playing. It's just they're catchy tunes. So I continue to do research. Matter of fact, I worked in operation with an agency on the West Coast last month in an intel gathering operation. And actually, I participated in undercover capacity. And I just spoke to one of the detectives actually yesterday, and he told me they got some good intel and they're generating some information, tip possibly, hopefully working toward a good investigation resulting in a good case. So yeah, it's very, very important. And that's again, one part of my training.
Very good, very good. I remember in the mid 1970s, before that, I listened to, Vicente Fernandez, El Chente, Mariachi and stuff, but mid 70s is kind of when I remember the Narco-Corridos coming on. And Los Tigres del Norte, you nailed it. That was probably the first group that I remember. Carmela, talking about Carmela coming up, you know,
Oh,
in
yeah.
the United States and all that. So, yeah, that's El Carro Rojo. And, you know, then it has, as you said, has evolved to far more violence in the lyrics, you know. But like you said, you know, I'm my screen there is a club, a nightclub where a lot of the bandas would play in White Center, Washington. That place is no longer there, or the building's still there, but the business isn't there. But it's called La Tropicana there in my background, and I remember going to La Tropicana in Sunnyside. And El Dos Tigres del Norte even mentioned Sunnyside in one of their songs, and everybody, you know, we go, hey, you know, they mentioned this. They traveled even back then all over, not just Mexico, but all over the United States. So, you know, it's it's very interesting to follow. I'm not as good as you as following the trends there, but I'm very much aware of that, and I agree. Officers can find that to be an asset if they're keeping up with the groups and where they're playing and what's going on in that world.
Right. Absolutely. And then another benefit for officers, if they're looking for a wanted cartel member, hey, they may be showing up at that concert. Why not go look for them and see if they're there?
Very good chance. Very good point. And so then let's talk a little bit more about the Narco-Cultura, Santa Muerte, and Jesus Malverde and all that. What can you tell us about that role that plays in that world?
Yeah, well, the bottom line is cartels and gangs working with the cartel. The bottom line, they pray for protection. They pray for protection against law enforcement. And they've been doing that for years and years. I remember being a narcotic detective in the 1980s and encountering altars and shrines and things of that nature. Although that has evolved quite a bit also. Back in those days, I would encounter, or we would encounter, the altars had what I call legitimate things, such as statues of Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary, and a lot of saints or santos. There was no Santa Muerte back then, not even Jesus Malverde yet. He came a little bit later, but he wasn't around. So now it's evolved to now you have Jesus Malverde, who is the original narco saint, who, by the way, did not originate as a narco saint. And then we have Santa Muerte, who had become extremely popular. And actually, she's the one that concerns me the most because she's very easily associated with death. And in my class, I talk about cartel-related murders and sacrifices to Santa Muerte that have occurred in Mexico, but also here in the United States. A lot of officers and people are not aware of that. And I discuss those incidents in my training. Jesus Malverde was the, well, let me back up a little. Getting back to that shrine working as a narcotics detective, I remember looking behind a statue of Jesus Christ, and I find a baggie full of balloons of heroin. And then I told her, well, you're under arrest. And I said, why did you have the heroin behind Jesus? And she looked at me and she said, well, he was supposed to protect me from you. And then, you know, I said, well, you know, it didn't work. And then her response was, and I'll never forget her response. Her response was this. She goes, yeah, I guess I need to pray harder. Wow. So that told me then was that, you know, the belief in this is unconditional. It's embedded in their heart, their soul, and their mind. She's going to jail. I got her heroin, and she still says, I need to pray harder. So now it's evolved to where they're adding a lot of different things, although they still pray to Jesus Christ and the different saints. Very often they add Santa Muerte and Jesus Malverde. Jesus Malverde was the original narco saint who did not originate as narco saint. Right? I don't believe that he even existed, to be honest with you. But my opinion doesn't matter to the people that do believe in him. They believe he was a bandit in the early 1900s in Culiacan, Sinaloa. He would hide in the green brush, wearing green camouflage, jump out, rob his victim. Whatever he got from them, he gave to the poor people. Okay, so the government caught up to him. They hung him from a tree. It was a public hanging, and all the poor people just brought their hero was dead. And the people start talking among themselves, saying, you know, He was our hero, and he died helping the poor people. Truly now he must be the angel of the poor. That's his original title, and that's very important because there are people in Mexico, even here in the United States, that pray to Jesus Malverde, not as a drug saint, but as the angel of the poor. And then
So he was kind of like a
several
Robin
years
Hood.
later, yeah, he's a Mexican version of Robin Hood. That's exactly right. A Mexican version of Robin Hood. And several years later, the Mexican cartel or law enforcement in Mexico started encountering images and statues of Santa Muerte when they would arrest a cartel member. And what that was all about is the Mexican cartel started praying to Jesus Malverde, and the relation there is like, yeah, we're doing a bad thing, but we're doing it for the right reasons, just like Jesus Malverde. So they adopted him as their patron saint. I've been to his shrine twice. The first time, 2004, when I began doing extensive research on the cartel, and then most recently, I want to say 2 weeks ago, something like that, and visited his shrine again in Culiacan, Sinaloa. So although he's not as popular as he used to be, he's still popular. He's still out there, and sometimes you'll see him with Santa Muerte and Jesus Christ and some of the other ones as well. As Santa Muerte, I first encountered Santa Muerte in 2004 when I first went to go see Jesus Malverde. And I heard about her and I started seeing her and I saw people praying to her, but these were not cartel members. These were poor people, very poor people, rough neighborhood, like in Tepito, which is an extremely poor and rough neighborhood, dangerous neighborhood. And then when I came back to the United States, I started talking to some officers, the guys I used to work with there in El Paso. Hey, have you seen Santa Muerte? And they said, no, we haven't seen her. I said, well, get ready, she's coming. And sure enough, she hit the southwest border. Now she's all over the United States. So there are a lot of drug cartel members, gang members that pray to her for protection from law enforcement and other people they consider their enemy. But there are a lot of people not involved in criminal activity on both sides of the border that also pray to her for whatever they desire. So that's very interesting, but she's out there, there's no doubt about it.
Okay, so we have a more of a comment in the message chat center that Jesus Malverde and Santa Muerte are appearing in around Pueblo, Colorado. We have a viewer from Pueblo, and he just wanted to mention that most definitely that is being to verify what you're saying. They are being seen with those symbols in the Pueblo, Colorado area.
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment because that brings up a memory. Because when I was at the shrine in Culiacan, they're selling a medallion with Chapo Guzman's image on there and its little statue. And my prediction is we've already seen those things, and they're going to turn El Chapo into a saint like Malverde, saint-like figure, because. And the reason for that is because the same stomping ground, Chapo Guzman was from Sinaloa, Culiacan, Mexico, just like Jesus Malverde. All right, so Malverde is robbing from the rich, giving to the poor. Chapo Guzman was doing a bad thing, but he was helping the poor people also. A lot of poor people there in Sinaloa and Culiacan were extremely upset when Chapo Guzman got arrested because he did a lot for them. Building buildings. I'm not vouching for the guy, don't get me wrong. I'm just reporting. So you have a lot of people that really admire him. So I don't think it's too far in the future where we're going to start seeing a possible shrine for Chapo Guzman as well.
Right. Well, the follow-up comment is, do you think that because El Chapo is being housed at the ADX Supermax, not too far from Pueblo, Colorado, that we'll be seeing more of the symbols of El Chapo, and you already answered that question for us. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, and it's going to happen. It's not a matter of it's not even if, or it's not even a matter of when, because it's happening. It's just a matter of when it's really going to take off.
Most definitely, and probably any of these major drug figures, like you said, because they are bringing in income, a lot of income into these very poor communities. So they don't view them like a lot of other people do. They view them as somebody good, as a moneymaker, as improving their livelihoods. So yeah,
Right.
definitely, whether Jesus Malverde was real or not, everybody knows El Chapo was real, and he was bringing in real
Right.
money.
Yeah, and he still is, in a way. The cartel is. Now you got the Chapitos, his sons, that are running the car together, the cartel, as well as El Mayo Zambada still there as well. And then as far as literally bringing in money, you got the daughters that are selling Chapo Guzman merchandise. You can get that online.
Very good, very good. And so, Robert, what other kind of things should officers and the public look out for? Because, like you said, a lot of the people we don't want to stereotype here. The majority of Mexican people here, whether they came in legal or illegally, are hardworking people. We both know that. However, there is this element, the narco-cultura, the narcos, the drug cartels, and they are doing some things that are not good. I don't seem to see, like the chopping of heads you mentioned, that are talked about in videos and that we've all seen in pictures. I don't see that up here as much. I know it seems like their activity here in the United States is a little bit more low key, that they are among us. My theory is that a lot of that money is not just going down to Mexico, it's right here in our communities, but they are not trying to draw attention to themselves. Do you agree with that or not?
Well, Gabe, I would have agreed with you more a few years ago. And there's no doubt that it's more low key than what's happening in Mexico. Mexico is just completely out of control. The cartels are running everything in Mexico. But as far as the United States, again, I've been doing this research for years and years, and I've consulted with several prosecutors on several different Mexican cartel-related murders that have occurred here in the United States. And I mean, in my training, I talk about a 13-year-old little girl that was beheaded by the Sinaloa cartel near Huntsville, Alabama. Talk about the Santa Muerte crew in Chicago that killed about 16 people, slashing their throats, and they were Santa Muerte worshipers. I talk about a cartel guy that they had a hit on a cartel guy in Chandler, Arizona, and they beheaded him and offered that beheading to Santa Muerte, and that occurred down the street from the police station. I talk about a little boy, a 6-year-old little boy that was brutally murdered by his father as a sacrifice to Santa Muerte. So we're seeing more and more of these shootings involving Santa Muerte, or they're recovering Santa Muerte shrines. Had some guy from Alabama to go a couple of months ago, flew up to Northern California to buy some drugs. They're murdered. They're just trying to find their bodies, and they made some arrests, and they found some Santa Muerte stuff going on there. There was a big shooting April 12th of 2021 in North Carolina, where you had a full-blown shootout with hundreds of rounds being fired in a trailer park area involving the Sinaloa cartel and the New Generation cartel. So I'm extremely concerned about that. There's been an increase in that. We have an increase in Mexican cartel cell groups here in the United States, and everybody needs to be aware of that, because the violence is occurring, and the danger is there. And the other thing I want to point out is that when we think about Mexican cartel, people should not only think about Mexicans. Mexicans will work with anybody that has money. There was a case here recently, someone gave me a white guy. White guy had a big old Santa Muerte shrine, had an gold-plated AK-47. I mean, living the life of a cartel guy, and he's a white guy. And the shooting I told you that happened over in North Carolina, the Sinaloa cartel, 2 black guys that work for the Sinaloa cartel. So we're seeing more and more people that are not Mexican also getting involved with the cartel. It's just a different world now, and the violence has increased. Now, more low key than Mexico, no doubt. But my opinion, as far as cartel violence, although it's not as bad as Mexico, it's getting worse here in the United States.
Okay. Yeah. I am aware of some of the incidents that occurred, but it seems like even the press and the politicians try to downplay that, the malls, the casinos, where some of these things happen. Some of the communities are very well off communities or middle class communities. And I don't think that the real estate associations and the business associations really want people to know about that. So, good point that it's out there. We just may not hear about it. I guess that's what I'm saying. Just don't hear about it a lot in the press. Very rare, or the details aren't let out. You hear about somebody getting killed, but they don't say, "Hey, who did it?" And it's Mexican drug cartels, and it was very vicious.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's why I go around the country trying to inform law enforcement officers about what's going on, and of course your listeners. But this is not directly cartel related, but you talk about the media and the politicians not telling you the whole story. What really upset me is that the politicians, anytime there's a so-called mass shooting, we need to control the guns. All I'm hearing about that incident that happened in Sacramento this past Sunday, very tragic, 6 people dead, several more wounded. But what you're not hearing, and I know for a fact because I talked to those officers out there, I talked to them the day it happened. It was a gang-related shooting. But the media doesn't say that. The politicians come out, oh my God, we need to control the guns. We need to do something on the gun. But nobody has mentioned that this was a gang-related shooting. It was a gang shooting another gang. And by the way, they were both black gangs. And that's what upsets me is get the story out. They're making it sound like, somebody just showed up and 2 guys that just started shooting randomly. No, this was a gang fight.
Right.
I just thought I'd throw that in because it just reminds me about how.
Definitely there's some issues with the media being transparent. A lot of times they focus on people being transparent, but they are not transparent a lot of times too, and they don't like to say the G word. They don't like to say gangs. A lot of times they won't put the race in if it's Latino or black, and these kind of things that really kind of sugarcoat the problem. So thank you for mentioning that. So Robert, I know you've done a lot of trainings. What kind of events do you have coming up here in the near future?
Well, actually, I'm gonna be doing a 2.5-day class on the Mexican cartels and their culture in Mission, Texas, next week, and then the next thing I have planned, I'm doing a class in North Carolina, actually very close to where that shooting happened between the New Generation Cartel and Sinaloa Cartel. I'm doing that April 25th to the 29th, and then further down the road, actually, I received word confirmation yesterday from my good friend Jimmy Calloway with the Georgia Gang Investigators Association that I'm going to be one of the speakers at the global gang conference being put on by the National Alliance of Gang Investigators Association in September in Atlanta. The other thing is that in May 9th to 13th, I'm doing a class at the ROCIC Regional Organized Crime Information Center in Nashville, Tennessee. I believe I have 3 seats left available for that class. And then right after that class, I'm headed to Sweden. I'm speaking at the Swedish Narcotic Officers Association. Yeah, I'm really honored. Actually, that's actually going to be the 3rd time I'm gonna speak there. They're real interested in the cartel because the cartels have reached Sweden. So we're going to talk about that as well. We're talking global stuff, not just Mexico and the United States. I got several other classes that are posted or will be posted on my website, which is robertalmonte.com. robertalmonte.com.
Well, that was going to be my next question. How can people get a hold of you if they want to, have you present or have some questions? So
yeah, I can give you more. I can give you my email. My email is robert@robertalmonte.com. robert@robertalmonte.com. I'm gonna give you my cell number too. It's 210-740-6170.
Okay, right on. So there you have it, people. If you want to get a hold of Robert, as you can tell, he's a wealth of knowledge. He gives on classes that are hours long, we only have a limited time here today, but I wanted to introduce you to him if you don't already know him. I can imagine there's very many people that don't know this guy because he is, an icon amongst the drug investigator world and narco culture world. So thank you for coming on the show, sir. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
No, it's an honor to be on your show, Gabe, and you're in the state of Washington. And I haven't done a class out there in Washington. Maybe we look at somebody to host that class out there and do a class on the Mexican cartel. I hear there's some cartel activity going out there going on there in the state of Washington.
There is just a little bit. Yes, sir. All right. Well, thank you, sir, for coming on, and you take care down there, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. God bless you and everyone listening. Take care. Thank you.
Para cantar el corrido voy a afinar mi acordeón. Recordando un buen amigo que se llama Juan Ayón, del estado de Durango. De mucha resolución.